This video is brought to you by catbeast.com. Design your own custom snapbacks and hats.
What's up, guys? For today's video, I'm going to be spectating a silver Lee Sin main, a viewer of mine who I randomly chose on my Twitter, who wanted me to watch one of his games and just do my best to critique him and try and figure out why he's silver. And I think many of you watching could be in similar situations, so I thought this would be a great idea for a video, so let's waste no time, let's focus in on the game, and let's point out some mistakes. So the very first thing that's important to point out in every game, but especially in this one, is thinking about who you're jungling against and trying to predict their first clear and what they'll try to do. A lot of this comes with experience playing against that champion, and in this one he's jungling versus Nunu, so that automatically tells me to protect myself from a cheesy invade. Nunu players like to take your camps and try and set you behind that way, so anytime I'm versing a Nunu, I tell my top laner to guard my topside buff, or maybe I'll just reverse my clear if my top laner won't do that for me. The very first mistake he's already made is not taking level 1 seriously. He's just chilling as blue and didn't even respect the Nunu camp steal. Starts his blue buff, doesn't send his top laner to protect, and as you can see, it does eventually lead to him losing his red buff, which on Lee Sin can be pretty bad. Now, I will say I'm very impressed with his ability chaining and camp kiting during his clear. I don't see many silver players who do that properly, so I do want to point out that he's doing a great job of clearing his camps properly to stay healthy. Alright, so he actually went for a full clear this game, which is okay in a lot of circumstances, but once again, you got to know your opponent. Doing full clears versus a Nunu is just not very smart. You're not going to out-farm a Nunu, but you can out-gank a Nunu, you can duel Nunu early on, so I wouldn't have recommended a full clear for him here. Now, as he finishes his clear minus his red buff because it got stolen, he then starts to take Scuttle right here at about 4 minutes, and I'm really wondering why. It doesn't level him up or anything, and Azir is so far out right now. If he just didn't hesitate and went mid, this is probably going to be an Azir flash, or at least make him spend a lot of mana to escape and make the lane a little bit easier for Cat. But Azir gets a ward down, and now he's spotted. Scuttle Crab is just not that important, unless you're trying to prep a Dragon or Baron, but in this situation, Scuttle is just not needed. Okay, so on his first back, he buys Tracker's Knife and Boots. This is not what I would recommend buying on your first back. Damage is a lot more important on Lee Sin early on, so I usually get double longswords in this situation, and Boots if I have enough, but otherwise the damage is more important, so I would definitely recommend fixing your first back. I actually explain exactly what to buy on your first back in my Spectating Peanut video, so if you're not sure, I definitely recommend checking that out after this video. Alright, so the first play that really transpires for him is a gank bot lane around 550, and what we see end up happening is he blast cones, and because Leo has flash, they just hard engage, and they are able to snag a kill on this Sona, but there was really no reason for the enemy bot lane to be so far out, so even though it worked out, this is a time where I'd clear camp before ganking bot lane, so that if it doesn't work out, you don't waste all that time walking down there and then having to walk back up to your Gromp. So it's just a good habit to get into, unless if you know the gank timing is very sensitive and it can't wait, but here I don't think it was. Just be mindful of when you need to force a quick gank and when you should be more efficient and clear first. But yeah, it's hard to argue against his decision because it did work out, but just some food for thought. Alright, so actually a pretty good decision here. He knows Nunu had stolen his red buff originally, so he decides to go to his red instead of blue here, probably expecting Nunu to try and steal it again. A smart decision to protect his buff this time around, but what ends up happening is the Nunu then goes to his blue, which shouldn't be a surprise, but if he understood his matchup better, he wouldn't have killed Raptors, he would have went right to his blue. So what started out as a good decision ends as another mistake because he gives up a blue buff to Nunu that he otherwise could have contested and wasted Nunu's time if he just prioritized big buffs here. Alright, so obviously a little bit of Lee Syndrome here. I'm actually okay with this dive though if he pulls it off cleaner and gets a 1-for-1 because Azir would miss a lot of farm and XP and it could be worth it, but Cat dies too, making it a 2-for-1, and he knows he screwed up here, so really nothing I need to say about it, that's just nerves. Okay, so closing in on 10 minutes into the game, his bot lane already takes bot tower, he's pretty behind. This is a great time to get back into the game by playing off the strengths of your team, which is bot lane. Leo and Jinx are so strong at this point. What he can do here is place a pink and tri-brush, clear out some vision, and he has one in his inventory, so it's not just a failure to buy a pink, it's just a failure to place it. And because bot lane is far out, they have a target over their head right now, so there's a good chance they'll send the enemy jungler bot side all he has to do is play the vision game and make a pick with his Leona and pick up some scrappy kills on anyone who's stupid enough to face check, and in this elo, I imagine someone would do it. I mean, this is just all part of conquering the map, and he misses a big opportunity of doing that because he's playing too individually and not using his teammates well. And he does end up dying here. Could have probably gotten the kill on Nunu if he comboed with QRQ instead of QQR. That's just a micro error. But that's the least of my worries when it comes to this play all around. He didn't need to be put in this situation if he played the vision game better. Now, just a minute later, bot lane gets taken down by the Azir and Nunu gank, but Teemo gets one back with the solo kill on Alawi top lane, and this just spells free Rift Herald. You got 4 enemies that showed bottom of the map, and you have a dead enemy top laner. Cat and Teemo are both in lane. This is the freest Rift Herald I've ever seen, but instead, Teemo goes back to farming and he tries to counter jungle on his own. I think once again, it just comes down to not using your teammates well, and to make things even worse, they have no vision in river, and so Nunu ends up claiming the Rift Herald for himself. As the game digresses, not a whole lot to say about the individual decisions being made, but at this point in the game, enough mistakes have already been made by him that the game is going to kind of feel lost. They have no map control and he's super behind because he didn't help snowball bot lane when they started to build a huge lead. Instead, he was mindlessly walking around the other parts of the map where he had no advantage to play off of, and he ultimately led Nunu into controlling the pace of the game, which forced him to just kind of farm all game long, and eventually Azir got super snowballed and he took over the game. And that's the result we're noticing here because he failed to recognize win conditions, which was bot lane. Very important to do every game is to try and figure out where your highest percentage of victory is going to derive from. Again, this game could have been very different if he tilted the enemy bot lane and used his own bot lane to get back into the game. And yeah, as you can see, they only have 1/3 of the map controlled at this point, and Lee Sin does not do well with only 1/3 of the map to work with. If you look at the minimap, you can see what I'm saying. The enemies have pressure in every lane that make up at least 2/3 of the map, and this is not the situation you want to find yourself in, especially on Lee Sin. So at this point in the game, his sole purpose is to try and peel for Jinx. Jinx is the win condition now. She's strong enough to carry, but it's not going to be done on her own. She still needs help, and that's what he should focus on. Now, a big moment in the game is about to occur. I'm going to let it play out and then explain why it was probably the biggest mistake made all game. Alright, so they've just now gotten themselves a 3-for-0. The only enemies alive are Caitlyn, who's super behind, and Nunu, who does like no damage anyways. This is a Baron call. It doesn't matter that they're low. They have 5 people alive, and Jinx has full HP. Have Leona tank it with Lee Sin shields, let Jinx melt the Baron, and worst case scenario, you peel off Baron and kill Nunu or Caitlyn if they come and contest, but most likely they wouldn't even contest, and you get a Baron at 23 minutes, which would actually turn this game completely around for them, but instead they get a tier 1 tower and a Cloud Drake. Now what we see happen is just an overall lack of map control. They're all grouping in this middle part of the map, but both bottom and top lane are being pressured and there's no one there to stop it, and this just allows them to go right back into the same bad setup we saw moments ago where they have only 1/3 of the map being controlled. And as the jungler, you have to know how to move your teammates around, and he clearly isn't sure what to have them do, so they lose the opportunity to reclaim some of the map. As this fight breaks out, I actually think they have a really good chance at winning because Jinx is so fed. Knowing she's your best shot at winning the fight, he has to be utilizing his W's on Jinx to give her some protection. Late game Lee Sin shields are actually a lot better than you might think, and since he's pretty worthless in a 5v5, the least he can do is focus on soaking some damage for Jinx. This is pretty much just turning into a classic silver game at this point. Neither team is fully capitalizing on their advantages, and the game just ends up dragging on longer than it needs to. But this play right here ends up being the straw that broke the camel's back. They get caught out in their own jungle, and that leads to the enemy getting Baron, which leads to them eventually ending the game, and them getting caught in the jungle comes back to not having map or vision control where they need it. They played at the other team's pace and didn't look to control the tempo. They didn't capitalize on their number advantages, and this allowed the Azir to carry the game. It's not just that Azir outplayed them, he just gave them so much map and lane pressure and let them constantly siege on them all day. All around, he gave them too much map to work with, which put Azir in the position to carry and ultimately led to this defeat. There was so many windows of opportunity to win this game, and he didn't see them. He admitted he had a bad game, that's normal. I fuck up my decisions too. It's a lot harder to apply than it looks, so let's not harp on him for playing bad. He's a good sport for letting me pick him apart in front of all of you. I know my play could be picked apart by better players as well, so let's be humble about our own play here. I hope this video gave you guys a lot of new perspective. I hope it helped you understand some common mistakes made in lower elo, and I hope you guys all around enjoyed it. That's where we're going to end today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like if you want me to do more spectates of fans. Subscribe if you're new here. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.